Welcome to the Numerologist Podcast, where we bring you a very special guest every single week to help guide you on your spiritual journey, live with abundance, and inspire your soul.
Hi, numerologist community, and welcome back to another episode of the Numerologist Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me once again. My name's Rose, and today I am here with our favorite numerologist, Roy. Hey, Roy.
Hey, how are you?
Really well, thank you. So today we're talking about the personality number. So let's get right to it. What is the personality number all about?
Okay, well, first let me start by saying that the personality number is definitely not the kind of thing that tells you about, what clothes are best or what kind of car you, quote, should, unquote, drive. Things like that are okay, but that's superstition. That's not really diving into the depth of numerology, because this number explores the interaction between your highest goals and your highest ideals and your psychic and physical environment. I was just doing some research the other day and was reading some Einstein, and he said that everything that's not me is my environment. In other words, he was carefully identifying himself as being his psychic self, about being his mind and his emotions, and everything that was not them was the environment. Okay. And it's important to think of it like that in terms of the personality, because the personality number is made up of, or the way it works within a human being is that we tend to make up our own ideas about life and our ideas about who we are and what we do from our responses from the environment. Like the life path numbers have to do with our environment, and the name numbers have to do with our relationship with the environment. And that's exactly what the personality number does. It's the central thing that brings you into a response, a call and response relationship with the world around you. Now, in psychology, it's basically, the personality is basically considered to be long-standing repeated behaviors of the body, speech, and mind, more or less your physical and emotional habits. Now, there are psychologists who don't agree with that view, but that's the standing one nowadays because it's easier to treat with behavioral therapy and drugs, than it is to deal with the Jungian type of perception of what a personality is. I tend to think of it as being like, how you're doing one thing and thinking about another. Well, the part of you that's thinking about other things or deciding which shirt to put on in the morning, or whether or not you need more salt in the food, that's like the personality number in action. Okay. We tend to look at the personality number as the channel through which the heart's desire reaches out to the world, and through which the sense impressions of the world reach the deepest level of the self. Okay. I'm sorry about that. I forgot to put my phone in airplane mode. But anyway, would reach the deepest level of the self and feed its power. Okay. The personality number and the heart's desire are really inseparable, but at the same time, they're sometimes at odds with one another. In other words, but it's easier to work with if we're using this sort of model of saying that the heart's desire and the personality number are two different things. Let me give you a quick example of that here before we move forward. Mm-hmm. In other words, if a person is, say, really into manifesting their goals or their dreams or something like that, first they get clear about them, which is clarifying the heart's desire, creating an open channel for it to operate. And then everything else involves the work of the personality number. In other words, sorting out, your thoughts about this particular goal you want to reach, and making sense of it, and even the doubts that come up about it, about your ability to achieve such a thing, are coming from out of the personality number, because this is stuff you've learned from life, not stuff that's part of the creative aspect of the mind, which is where the heart's desire has control. You see what I mean? In other words, there are no obstacles to the creative mind, only to the personality, because it's found them. It knows they're there. You see?
Okay, gotcha. So is this the level at which you can read about the result of someone's decisions?
Well, not quite. Because the personality number is the part of you that expresses both complicated and simple decisions in the world. It's also the facet of the self that is most easily influenced by peers, by the culture, by the environment a person lives in, by thoughts and ideas of others. Now, this isn't a bad thing, because nobody wants to be a total oddball, a loner. We have to get along with other people. That is human nature. We're not, how do I put it, solitary creatures. It's sometimes called the quiet self, or the part of self that remains hidden from others, but does all the work when it comes to creating happiness and making choices in everyday life, or expressing your personal power, your instinctual power, and so on and so forth. And this is why all existing self-help and psychological growth literature is designed to work with the personality number. In other words, the goal of most of this work, including the work of psychotherapy, is designed to connect the personality number with the heart's desire in a fluid and uplifting way. Now, there can be glimpses of it, and so on and so forth. And people may even view the heart's desire negatively, like people who say to themselves, "Oh, it's impossible. I'll never be a millionaire," or I'll never have a sailboat," or something like that. That's stuff that's in the heart's desire that a person has decided that they can't have on the basis of what other people tell them, their experience in the environment or in the world. I mean, of course, it's not when the desire is something totally at odds with reality. In other words, a person who's 80 years old and has a bad ankle is not going to win the Boston Marathon. You see what I mean? No matter how much they want it. It's something they're not going to manifest unless they make a special category for 80-year-old people with bad ankles. Okay. Now, it is the key to manifesting and healing in a most important way. All other miracles that people strive for in this day and age, in a very specific way, the personality number is the key to making these things manifest. Okay. In our day-to-day lives, we usually depend on our personality numbers to help us make decisions. Things like decisions about our personal style, food choices, as I mentioned before, are almost always built along the lines of the personality number, the likes and dislikes, as I mentioned before, as to whether there's enough salt in this soup. This is a personal like and dislike. I personally don't think that has anything to do with the heart's desire. I think that's a matter of what you've adopted to, and the part of you that's changed. When I was a kid, I hated asparagus. Now I eat it every week, because of just changes, I guess, in understanding things and in educating your senses and so on and so forth. So, but the decisions that we need to make about our future and the fulfillment of our deepest desires need to be illumined, or I guess I could say empowered by the heart's desire. And this is where the problems can arise, okay? Because personality number includes the interactive, I guess you could call it, mind, and the facet of the subconscious mind that builds values, beliefs, and so forth. And and those drive the majority of our activities. It's through this area of consciousness where the personality and heart's desire connect. But at the same time, we take up many of these plans and thoughts from our culture and from other people because we usually have similar needs, desires, and goals. And what that ends up doing is building a wall between the personality and the heart's desire, and making it very difficult for anyone to find what it is they truly want out of life. Okay.
Right. So I guess that it has a lot to do with communication then.
Yeah, it does. It's not only communication with other people, it's also communication with the deepest layers of the self. Okay. Because all forms of communication are bidirectional. In other words, they go both ways. Talking to you doesn't do any good if you're just not there, as we sometimes get on phone calls that don't connect. Okay. At the same time, thinking to yourself about things that you've already got objections toward, really doesn't produce an effect. It's a kind of a shared mentality that language creates for us. But in our inner self, this has to do with symbols, ideas, signs, things that we're not even aware of in our daily thoughts. And that means we can have a conflict between motivations and aims and our ability to follow through on those motivations and aims. It's kind of what some psychologists used to call a complex, or something of that nature. And plus, there are all these thoughts that are driven by peer pressure and fads and necessities and how you've been taught, to respond to immediate situations, can cloud up the connection between the personality and the heart's desire, especially when these thoughts conflict with the deeper innovations.
I can see that. So I guess that's what it means when people say they're not quite on the same page, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's absolutely what it means when people are talking to each other. But when you're dealing with the interaction between the heart's desire and the personality number, you can't see that as being two different versions of yourself. It's all one version of yourself, but it's like in part of that version of yourself that connects the two. It's more like having a kind of a problem, like an illness that's very hard to get rid of. Good God, I want to get rid of this cold. I hate having my nose stuffed up. Things like that. These are the same kind of things that non how do I put it, that non-positive thinking does to you. It creates that blockage. But the thing of it is that between two people, this not being on the same page is not that hard to fix. And at the core of most self-improvement methods, even meditation, the problem between the being on the same page between the heart's desire and personality numbers is not that hard to fix either. You see what I mean?
Yeah. So I guess that's the change your mind, change your life kind of philosophy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You nailed it. Okay. And the best thing about it is that this is a totally scientific thing. This is something that we have proven. Although they don't talk about it much, usually all they talk about is the stuff having to do with cosmetics and so on and so forth. But there's a reason for that. The medical industry and at least in America, the medical industry went through a big thing to do their best to outlaw any of the mind science that existed at the end of the 19th century when people were really interested in exploring this. But according to recent scientific studies in neurophysiology and biochemistry and so on and so forth, we've come up with this thing called neuroplasticity, that the thoughts literally change the brain. I mean, physically alter the way the brain works throughout your life. And this affects your ambitions, your drives, your efficiency, your sensitivity, in your relationships with others, and even more. Now, the brain is not a self-sealing tire. It doesn't automatically repair its wounds, which is the way they like to think in a lot of science nowadays, that there's no such thing as consciousness. There's just the brain, which is a very sophisticated computer. That's baloney. Okay. And the thing about neuroplasticity is that this is a fact that you can look up on the internet or anywhere. It's been tested and proven in laboratory conditions. Of course, you're going to run across skeptics, but if the person's a skeptic, that's just a person that likes to talk and thinks too much of themselves, But this is also a vulnerability, because thoughts based on the influence of others can change the brain as well. Okay. We know this, for instance, from hypnosis. All right. That's what it does. It's common to all people, and it's what self-help literature, metaphysics, spiritual pursuits, Jungian therapy, and other practices try to help us overcome. It's a freedom from that influence of others without, having to blow them off or become an isolated loner for the rest of your life or anything like that. But that's what all these teachings that we have that connect body and soul and spirit and so on and so forth, that's what they all are trying to help us overcome. Okay, this vulnerability because of our neuroplasticity. And they've known about this since a long time before this stuff was even discovered. All right. Personality number. Now, jump back to that. Okay. Personality number is also where the decision to make a radical change in one's life can take place. Sometimes it's a change that's prompted by one's higher consciousness or the heart's desire, and manifests as events like opening a business of one's own, or entry onto a spiritual path, or creating a major change in profession or career, or maybe moving far away from one's current place of residence. These kind of things usually have to do with the heart's desire, especially if they come on suddenly in a person. All right. In other words, one of the cycles, pinnacles of personal years that syncs up with the personality number and the heart's desire is usually a sign that these major changes might be happening. And you can tell when a dramatic change comes from this way, because the person becomes really passionate about making that change happen. But you can also tell when an important change in one's life was not prompted by the heart's desire. And that's usually when a person acts out of fear, resentment, emotional pain, or loneliness. The change they make usually throws them into a situation they regret later. Like when somebody gets into a relationship with a person that's really not good for them, and they know it, but they think it's going to be a better choice than being by themselves. You see what I mean? It usually ends up being a much worse choice, but that's when it's only the personality number in action as opposed to being the heart's desire in action. Okay. Now, sometimes the personality number shows its power while one is young, and at others, these changes happen later in life. That value usually depends on its agreement with life path cycles or pinnacles and so on and so forth. And it's especially true if the personality number and the heart's desire work well together, or are synchronous, or oh man, I hate using the word, are harmonic, in their relationship. In other words, I hate using the word compatibility because that doesn't have anything to do with anything. I've known several people in my life, and I've had many, many clients who say, "Oh, you're compatible with so and so," and they end up having the worst fights and arguments and end up leaving each other after a while and come back and ask me, "Well, somebody told me we were compatible." Now I have to explain to them that doesn't mean anything. Anybody can get along with anybody unless there's a really difficult, personality problem between them. Okay. But nature's kind in this ways, in that there are many ways that you can tune the personality number and the heart's desire to one another, and thereby harmonize your life. And this tuning can also give you the push you need to achieve your goals. Okay. And that's what all the self-help and new thought literature is about, tuning the personality to the heart's desire.
So I guess this is what people want to change their name for, right?
Yeah, right. We're going to talk about that a bit when we get to the expression. But let me say this: a name change is nothing to fool around with. Um, Sometimes they're done involuntarily or even forced upon us by others. Well, for instance, what was her name? Norma Jean something or other that changed her name to Marilyn Monroe. That was heart's desire working. Okay. But it didn't do a whole lot for her personal life. But as far as her stardom and her fame and so on is concerned, it did a miraculous amount of change. But we look at Lindsay Lohan. Okay, originally her name was Lindsay D. Lohan, and she changed it to Lindsay Morgan Lohan, and that's when her career completely was torn apart. I think the main reason is that she lost that D, and she lost the extra E's, which made her perfectly compatible numerologically with Disney. You could extract Disney from her name, and and when she changed it, she lost that ability. And it wasn't long before she lost the contract with them. Yeah, so it's nothing to experiment with. Okay, never change your name unless the issue is a marriage or a divorce or something like that. Without the help of a reliable expert. I wanted to emphasize that before I went on. Think about it like this. Okay, if you change your name, you'll change your personality number, your heart's desire, or both. And you'll also change the challenges that go with them, the personality number challenge and the heart's desire challenge. This is giving you a pretty steep learning curve caused by the friction between the old and the new you. You may be pushed into a completely new experience of yourself. And if you look at the change of making practices of our past and present self help gurus, the work always begins within, and the outer life catches up with you as you make changes in your environment or lifestyle to support the change. You see what I mean? In other words, the change that the teachers preach is to change something within, change your attitude, and everything else will begin to catch up with you. Okay, and that's basically what this is about. In other words, sure, name changes can be done. They can be done effectively, but you don't want to depend on that as being your key to success or happiness or anything like that.
Gotcha. Okay. So how do we find the personality number and its challenge?
Oh, okay. Well, it's easy enough. Let's take a person named Dave Jones. Now, like the heart's desire is the sum of the vowels okay, is the sum of all the vowels in the name. And the vowels, as we explained before, are like the soul of a word, okay? And the personality is like the form that soul takes, okay? So we take the personality number as being the consonants, okay? You change one consonant in a word, and the difference between dog and dot. Not only two different things, but one's a concept and the other one is a living thing. Okay. Um, so a person named Dave Jones would have these numbers: 444, 1, 5, 1. That's equal to 19, and 1 plus 9 equals 1. Okay. Personality challenge is the difference between the first and last consonants in the name. So if we're looking at this Dave Jones, we've got a personality number of 4 is the D, and S is a 1. So we subtract 1 from 4, and that's equal to 3. So the personality challenge is going to be 3. Now, if both the first and last consonants in the say are the same number, okay, then let's count it as 9 instead of 0, because, like, for instance, if his name was something like Steve Jones, then both would be 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So if you get a 0 when you're working on your own, count it as 9 instead. It's easier to read that way and think about, okay? So let's take a look at what these personality challenges might mean. 1, personality numbers and their challenges might mean. Personality 1 is one with healthy self-esteem, and it's usually tempered by respect and compassion for others. That's the goal of the 1 personality number. A person with a 1 personality number should never, ever be afraid to stand out from the crowd. Okay. Number 2 has a goal of supporting others without giving up your own dreams and ideals. And a personality 2 should never avoid standing up for their own dreams, just like in any other variation of 2. Because the 2 is the most cooperative number, and people with that as a personality or a soul urge or a pinnacle or whatever, this is always a period in which the default action would probably be to give up on your own dreams in favor of someone else's, okay? Or to fall into a belief that your dreams cannot be attained, all right? Number 3 is artistry and communication and using your own talents for the benefit of others. This is the goal of 3. And 3 should never have stage fright, so to speak, or writer's block. Never be afraid to show off your talents if you have a personality of 3. Personality of 4, being reliable and dependable while building structure and stability is the goal of a 4. And they should never avoid expressing their determination. Okay. Bringing the benefits of adventure and freedom in a positive way to others is the goal of 5. But a 5 should never avoid their responsibilities. For the number 6, bringing the benefits of harmony and balance to others in a positive way is the absolute unalterable goal of the 6. And I say unalterable because they'll try this even when the person is clearly not acting in their favor or clearly not supportive of their own activities. And A six always has to be willing to counsel or teach other people. A lot of the times he'll get people who just don't want to hear it. Like in that song by the Killers, I got nothing to learn. I'm sorry. This is the way some of those people are who have this personality six, but being willing to try is the main thing because there's so many other people. For every one like that, a six is going to meet 100 at least who will benefit from the advice or friendship or whatever it is that they give them to help them out. Um, let's see, the seven is about bridging the gap between knowledge and faith for the benefit of others. Now, there are some people whose entire body of knowledge is based on faith. In other words, they believe some teacher of theirs or some conspiracy radio show or something like that. And that's the entire breadth of their knowledge. That's not what seven is trying to do. Seven is trying to bridge the gap between information and reason, between your knowledge of the world and your faith in humanity or God or whatever it is you consider as the higher power, in the world, and things like that. Even in law, it takes a tremendous amount of knowledge to deal with legal problems, but the person who's the lawyer is the one who has faith in the law itself, faith in fairness, and so on and so on. So, in other words, with seven, there's a very specific trouble that can come to people who have seven personality numbers, and but it will only come if they isolate themselves from other people. So, never ever isolate yourself from others if you're a seven. Okay. Eight, using the gifts of perseverance and discipline for the benefit of others is the goal for eight. If you ever saw My Fair Lady, okay, no, not My Fair Lady. I'm thinking of Sound of Music, the Sound of Music musical play that was made into a movie. It's like the portrayal of the father in that movie was a perfect example of an eight. He still sticks in my mind. And it's been at least 30 years since I've seen that movie. But anyway, it's about being tolerant and accepting of other people. Okay. Uh, Nine for that one was using the abilities for achievement and completion for the benefit of others is the goal. Always look for the opportunity to be a part of mutual or shared success. Now, these are very basic statements, but as we're moving forward in the future, we'll explore them a bit more fully. Okay. Now, the personality challenge is a little bit different in terms of reading the number of the challenge because it has to do with things that can block your connection with the heart's desire. Okay. With the one, the personality challenge is to never fear doing things differently from others. In other words, conformity is what the personality challenge will bring if it happens to be a one. Um, for number two, the personality challenge is never give up on your dreams from a fear of loneliness. If you have this great dream and it's realizable and other people know it and you tell them about it and they'll tell you, hey, it's lonely at the top, just tell them, nah, it's just more crowded at the bottom. This is a hard thing for a two personality challenge to do. Okay. Um, Personality challenge for three may even be harder because it's about never getting involved in passing gossip or supporting rumors and so on and so forth. That is absolutely the worst thing that a person with the personality challenge three can do. In other words, once they're involved in that thing, it takes up a whole little space in the mind, like it's a new member of the community that thinks negative thoughts, and those negative thoughts bleed over into thinking negatively about yourself. All right. Unless the people that you're gossiping about hear about it and start passing gossip about you, then we could have the influence of mind-to-mind communication, all that sort of thing. So never, ever, if you have three as a personality challenge, and everybody in general should do the best they can to avoid gossip and rumors. Okay. With four, never holding on to resentments or anger. If four is the personality challenge, you'll have the tendency to hold on to them and build your future on the basis of resentment or anger. There must be at least 100 action movies, both in the West and in Asia, that have to do with that, about a person whose only driving force in life is vengeance to get back at somebody because of some hurt they've caused them or something like that. In other words, this might be the hardest thing for a person with a four personality challenge to do, is to be able to let go of that kind of resentment before it, else it'll become a grudge, and you know what they can do. You've probably seen the movie. The five is to never get involved in anything that can limit your freedom. Now, this is often hard in today's world because we all need money, we all need jobs, we all need work, we all like having somebody around us to, share life with, right? But very often a five will think in those terms and come to find out that now their freedom is so limited, they're miserable all the time and don't know why. This is what the key is. Always think ahead and make sure that what you're doing will not limit your freedom to the point that you can't explore your own sense of adventure and so on and so forth. In other words, even as only a personality challenge, it can do this to a person. But again, this kind of personality challenge can only happen if the person, say, has a four as the first letter in the name, first consonant in the name, and say a nine as the last consonant in the name. So, this is kind of a condition, or they could be reversed one to the other. And this is to avoid anything that limits freedom. Okay. The six is to never compromise your best interests out of sympathy. In other words, this is like the situation where, you might be feeling terribly sympathetic to someone and so on and so forth. And you decide that you're going to change your whole life in order to, or change your lifestyle, or, your work or relationship with a family or something, like, because you feel sorry for somebody. Forget about it. That will do you no good whatsoever, because, six is the number of responsibility, and doing this breaks your responsibility to your own self-interest, your own best interests, your own prime directive, okay, your own top priorities, For the seven, you should never avoid social life or refuse an offer of friendship. Now, this might happen in the case of a person who has, say, for instance, 9 is the first letter and a 2 is the last consonant. They might have this tendency to avoid a social interaction or avoid an offer of friendship because, that last letter in the name, we'll be talking about this when we get to the alphabet, the personal alphabet, but that last letter in the last name is a sign of the way you leave things with people. So you may leave with people the fact that you want to be a friend, or you want to get together with them in some way or another, but then you don't follow up, you know. So if someone offers you friendship, you should go ahead and accept it, but trust yourself, while trusting yourself, to find out really quickly whether that person is acting in your interests, or whether they are acting in their own interests and motivations, and have the ability to throw you off of your path in life, your personal path in life. The For the eight, the challenge is to never think that you have to do everything yourself. Okay, because with eight, is I think it was an eight that invented that saying that if you want anything done right, you have to do it yourself. That's kind of like a natural philosophy for eight, but never ever do that if eight is the challenge number. Okay, and if nine is the personality challenge, it's similar to eight, but somewhat different. Never think that you have to do everything your own way. All right. Nine, as a number, tends to be very individualistic and very creative, and wants to do things their own way almost all the time. But you don't have to do everything like that. There's even a famous story about that in Chinese, about a guy putting feet on a snake and losing the contest because he was done first. And he didn't get the big barrel of wine that was the prize. But there's some hints about the personality number that I want to cover too. Okay, one thing to think about when exploring the personality number is that people will tend to default to a certain lifestyle. And this doesn't only have to do with the culture that they're in, the society that they live in, but it can be boiled down into simple categories. And these default behaviors in the lifestyle can be either problematic or very, very positive for a person. Okay. Now, one is a personality number of one will tend to express themselves and their opinions of themselves through their clothing, style of speech, and appearance. If you see a person who has a personality number of one and they're dressed very properly and elegantly in some way or another, then they probably think pretty well of themselves. On the other hand, if you find somebody who dresses in a particularly aggressive way and they have a personality number of one, they probably think a little bit too highly of themselves, like they're tough guys or they're bad. This is what I'm getting at. This is easy to tell with a one because they'll express themselves in that way. Two, tends to conform to the peer group in business or private life in their choices regarding personal style. In other words, they do everything, they'll default to doing everything pretty much the way everybody else does them. Okay. But this can leak into the creative mind, into the creativity, and cause them to bend easily when it comes to making their own decisions about what they want in life. All right. The three tends to be expressive or attention getting in their personal style of dress and behavior. Like, you know, a friend of mine, I was talking about this jacket I had bought with a friend of mine, and he said, "Well, why don't you have one like that?" And pointed at a guy who was wearing one of these jackets that's a hoodie with somebody's name and pictures and whatnot on it. I said, "Because I'm not in the advertising business. You know, they could pay me for wearing one of those, but I'm not going to do it by my own choice." But that's the way threes are. When three is a personality number, they tend to be expressive in this way. Okay. Um, in their style of dressing and behavior. In other words, there's something about something they're wearing that's going to make a person ask, "Where did you get that?" or "How did you get that?" or "Did you make that yourself?" or something to show that it grabbed their attention. All right. The four tends to like a homey look, you know, flannel shirts and jeans and so on and so forth. And they often dress as if they were at work, even when they relax. So, in other words, if you know somebody who's a business person, who's an office worker, they're more likely to dress as you know, with the suit or whatever that's required by the job, even when they come home. You know, and on the other hand, somebody who's works in industry or carpentry or something like that will tend to dress like the guys on the job, even when they're relaxing and so on and so forth, and will tend to try to dress up, you know, this informal kind of utilitarian clothing that they wear. Okay. On people on five, now they're interesting because they tend to stay on the cutting edge of style and fashion. They're even when they don't want to. You know, they'll do things unconsciously, like throw out a bunch of pants or something like that because all of a sudden they're not short enough for their taste, and find out that before people have noticed, they have started a new trend. Okay, so the fives tend to be the trendsetters. Six likes comfort and elegance in their personal style. They tend to like a lot of jewelry too, but they like comfort and elegance in their personal style, but always wants others to feel comfortable around them. So they might have, you know, a 4 carat ring on, a 4 carat diamond ring on, and wear sweatpants. All right. This is six. Um, um, the seven tends to look professional or style themselves as an extreme nonconformist. In other words, it goes one way or the other with seven. You'll have one seven who will wear one of those three-piece banker suits, and his brother, who's also a seven, may walk around in you know, ragged jeans and a hoodie all the time and sit in the corner by themselves. It all depends on their activities in life, but they're a little hard to tell because either they look very professional or they do everything they can to say to people, "I'm not like you." Okay. The eight tends to look official or authoritative no matter what they have on, you know, and what their lifestyle or occupation is. In other words, an eight could be wearing, you know, a t-shirt, a sweater, and jeans, and they look like they mean business. Okay, it's just something about that vibration that does that. And the nine tends to look daring or accomplished no matter what they do. In other words, if a nine puts on a military jacket or sweater or something, then they look like a soldier. Okay. If they grab a formal shirt and put it on, then you wonder if this person is a maitre d' or as a musician, you know, in an orchestral musician, by way of profession. In other words, the nines look like what look accomplished no matter what it is they do. They look like they're supposed to be doing it or that they've mastered it in some way or another. Now, here's something interesting that I remembered when I was working on what I'm going to talk about in this post, is that Cairo, the man who wrote the first numerology book that I ever read. I think he had another name of Count Louis Hamon. You know, he was British. He wrote in that book on numerology that a 9 should avoid wearing black. Okay. I found that very interesting because it would seem to me like the black would absorb some of that energy, but I don't know where he got it from. I think he got it from India because it sounds like one of their ideas. But you know, I have a lot of 9s in my chart, and I don't avoid it at all. And I don't think it's creating a problem for me. I think it's mostly because 9s are kind of sensitive and need to avoid wearing black to avoid, people mistaking their ideas and intentions. But I don't think it matters once if there's a professional reason why they should be wearing it. You know, like you're going to tell that to a 9 person who's an undertaker, right? But anyway, that's about it for this introduction to the personality numbers. So next time we're going to explore the expression and why it's such an important fundamental element of a numerology chart. And as a matter of fact, I think I've broken that down into 2 or 3 different talks because there's so much to cover when we talk about the expression, okay?
Excellent. All right, Roy, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. We always have such good fun and learn so much when we talk to you. So thank you. And I can't wait till next time when we talk about the expression number.
Yeah, we're going to get started at least.
Awesome. All right.
Okay.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Hey numerologist community, I hope you really enjoyed this podcast on Numerologist's YouTube channel. You can head to the link in the description if you want to listen to this on iTunes or Google Podcasts, and you can subscribe there too. If you love this video and want to see more, make sure you subscribe to our channel as well.